We all got to make our coins. We all got to make sure we're on top of our game. We got to get into these doors that are seemingly harder to get into now because of all the stuff that's going on in the world. So what we say is just keep passing that baton on to the next person. Make sure that somebody who's following in your footsteps, tell them what they need to do and make sure that they have what they need, and then just keep it going like a domino effect, one after another. If we do that and do more of that, we would be just fine.
You know, mentorship is something that I've been blessed to do, and it's something I take very seriously. An opportunity to be able to pass on knowledge and information is something that should never be taken lightly. Well, today's guest is certainly no stranger to mentorship. The one and only Michael Lyle. Mike is someone, as I like to call him, your favorite mentor's mentor. He's a mentor to me on how to mentor to other people. But some of our previous guests, Kelsey Nelson, Ashley Baker, Brianna Dahlquist, Brandon Williams, Renee Washington, he served as a mentor. He serves, I should say, as a mentor to all of them. And simply because he loves this business and he loves giving back. So, ladies and gentlemen, coming up, you will hear about Mike's journey as a radio anchor, but also why he takes great pride in being a mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Lyle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I have so far the most experience, I don't want to say the most veteranized, but I should say the veteran of the group. I'm up here making up words saying veteranized. I have the one, the only, and I'm going to say it, he wouldn't say it about himself, the legend, Michael Lyle, as I like to call him, your favorite mentor's mentor. Mike, what's up, big bro? How you feeling?
Brian, man, I appreciate that wonderful introduction. Legendary. Well, I'll take it. I don't know about that, but listen, brother, I won't argue that at all. I appreciate it. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out, your busy schedule. I mean, you do so much. Not only do you, obviously you anchor, but you also help so many people in this business. And I'm talking people who are on television, people who are not on television, people who are in school, people who are essentially veterans themselves. You help them too. So, I'm excited to really get into your career and find out how you became the man.
Brother, it's been a long journey for me, 21 years and counting in this business. And if you've worked in the industry for that long of a time, you're not going to go through it without any hiccups or any trials and tribulations or any setbacks. I mean, you talk to many professionals who've worked in this industry like we have, they'll tell you the same thing. We've all been down that road where we've had our ups and then all of a sudden we had to take a few steps backwards because things have happened that are beyond our control. But the main thing I tell people about the industry that we work in is that you have to stay consistent, persistent, and committed, because you're always going to find yourselves going through ups and downs. And as this whole industry is changing, you see it all the time. You read about it, you hear about it. People are losing their jobs now. The industry is becoming more saturated. There's not as many opportunities out there. It's highly competitive because for every job that becomes open, there's always like 20 or 30 people vying for that same position that you want. So I always stress the importance of constantly staying on that grind and hustle like I do, because you just never know what's going to happen, and you want to be the one that gets that opportunity before somebody else comes in there and just takes it from you.
Wow, yeah, you brought up a lot of good points, man. It's always hustling. I respect the fact that somebody like you would stay in the business this long. I see a lot of, and this is no disrespect to the people who are in those groups, because to be honest with you, I'm in those groups, but I see a lot of Plan B groups on Facebook and Twitter. I see a lot of conversations. I've seen so many people make the transition out of journalism that's really, I thought were good enough to be in the business, but they just, wasn't patient enough, and maybe it's just they've realized that they didn't have the passion. Maybe that's a better way to explain it. But one thing, anybody who knows you, they know you are passionate about this business, and you enjoy giving back. But I want to get into first your education. You started off at Howard University. I'm a Morgan grad. I know you Howard grad. At the end of the day, it's all HBCU love. And then you went to, I don't know if I always say this right, Quinnipiac University.
Quinnipiac, you're close. Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac. And the thing is, when I was in Bristol, I went to school with a lot of people. Shout out to my boy Kevin Lowe, who's now with Good Morning America, I believe. But I want you to touch on why you decided to get a master's in journalism, because a lot of times people don't know, and the target audience for this show is people who want to hear these stories, but people who can get advice. And that's why I had to have you on here, and I want you to touch on why you decided that it was important for you to get a master's.
First and foremost, as a black man living in a country where we're always up against the odds, I will never, ever tell anyone never to further their educational background. Because when I was going for my master's at Quinnipiac, I had people tell me, even some of my own colleagues in D.C. at Howard would say this to me: "Oh, don't waste your time going to get your master's degree. You don't need a master's. What do you need a master's for? You're going to be in journalism. You don't need a secondary degree to flourish in this business." Well, I beg to differ, because having a master's degree, Brian, has opened more doors for me than I thought that were going to be possible. Now, this is not a knock to my alma mater, HU. I love HU to death. That's where I got my start. I will always be a Bison for life. But going to another school here in Connecticut allowed me to get more exposure, and it also increased my knowledge of the industry as well as the techie side of it. Because as you know, we use a lot of technology now to communicate with people on this earth. We don't just use cell phones. We use them for other purposes. We have social media now. We have advanced, we have email. We have a lot of things that we use now as journalists to communicate with the general public. So going back to get my master's allowed me to learn more about the techie side of the industry, and not just also furthering my knowledge of what the business meant as itself. Plus, I've learned that having another degree like a master's helps you open more doors not just when you're applying for jobs, but say you find yourself in a situation where you can't find a job necessarily in the business. Well, you can use the master's, which I found out, by teaching in the profession. And I say that because after I got my master's at Quinnipiac in 2008, just a few months after I got my master's, my graduate program director had asked me if I wanted to come back that fall to teach a course in audio production. I said, wait a minute, I've never taught in my life. This is my first job teaching, period. I don't even teach, I haven't taught high school, let alone college. Now you're asking me to come back and teach a 3-credit elective in audio production? And he told me, well, you have the experience. You worked at ESPN, because, again, that's where I got my start also out of college from Howard. I started off at ESPN. I worked there for 6 years, so that allowed me to open doors with the communications committee up at Quinnipiac, and that's why they asked me to come back to teach the course, because I had a master's. Now, if you don't have a master's degree, you can't do other things in this business without a master's, and that's the truth. If you want to go back into education, a master's will help you do that. So that's why I went back. Not just only because my parents also wanted me to make sure I had the proper education, because they feel like, you know what, you're going to live in this world, you better make sure you have not just the paper, but you need to have that knowledge too, because there's so many people out there that are competing with you for that same job, but you got to be a step ahead of the competition, not just with being smart, but also have the papers to back up what you know. And I think having a master's degree was an intricate part of that. So again, I would never tell anyone that if you have an opportunity, especially if your job's going to even pay for the educational cost, if they're going to foot the bill for your expenses and tuition, hell, I say go back and get it and make the most of it. And you never know what that can lead to. So I'm living proof that having a master's is essential, especially with the way this industry is going, because when you're applying for jobs, having the master's will stand out quicker, and they'll say, he has some experience, he has intelligence too. Let's check him out or her out.
Wow, man. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit. I would never tell anybody not to, but I thought for me personally, I was like, maybe I don't need one. And at the time I went back to school, I was a non-traditional student. So I graduated from Morgan State at 27. And my thought process was, man, nah, I ain't about to do all that. But actually I was 26. But you saying that is like really, because I've been thinking about it. So maybe break some news.
Brian, here's the thing, Brian. I got my master's degree at 26. Okay. I graduated from Howard at 21. So I was already in the middle of doing the work, and I figured I didn't have as much many responsibilities at the time as well. So that allowed me to live life a little bit more freely. And I figured might as well use that time to get my education out the way before time catches up with you, as you know. And then you're not going to want to have those desires to go back to go and get your education. So better to do it while you still have that vigorous and aggressive mentality before you get too down the line where you say, I don't know if I have time for that now.
Now let's get into your career, man. So at the time you was at my alma mater, you spent a longer period of time there, and that is the great ESPN, man. Um, Now, so you went there while you were in college as an intern, or is that how that worked? Or
Now, here's how I got the job at ESPN, and this is where we're going to touch on the NABJ, because right after I left from Howard, it took me a few months before I was able to find that first breakthrough in the business. And my first year in the National Association of Black Journalists, the first year was in 2003. That summer, the convention was held in Dallas. So I took a chance at going down there and meeting with the people for a job because I needed a job. So I took a chance. I left my resume and my application with the ESPN folks that were down there recruiting, and I didn't know what to expect. So I just did what I had to do. I figured I was fresh out of college. I was ready to go to work. I figured, okay, let me try this out, see what happens. So at the time, I was also living in New Jersey, where I'm originally from. I get back from the convention a week later. So I'm at breakfast with my parents, and the phone rings, and I see on our caller ID, the 4 letters popped up on the caller ID, Brian, ESPN.
wow.
Everybody at the table stopped and looked at each other like, really? They looked at me like, are you going to answer that? I said, yes.
Real quick, Mike. I just want you to let people know we're talking about house phone, caller ID. Everybody sees it.
House phone in 2003, we had house phones. We didn't have all this advanced stuff that we have now. Yeah, when we had caller ID and house phones, where it was like the actual caller ID was on a separate line, not on the phones now, like they have them built into the phone.
Yeah, I just want people to see this visual.
Yeah, 2003 it might sound old school to a lot of us, but it still feels like yesterday to me. But anyway, I hear what you're saying. But I answered the phone, and it was somebody from ESPN that was a recruiter there on the other end. He asked me, how would you like to work for ESPN? I said, absolutely, I would love to. So within the next week, I was actually getting my resume together and my wardrobe together. They were actually going to fly me up to Bristol, Connecticut from New Jersey. I said, no, I'll just take the drive up, no problem. I drove all the way up to Bristol and met with the people up there. They gave me a tour of the campus. And by the way, in 2003, that was a different look to the ESPN campus. It looks nothing like it does now when I was there, Brian. I think you and I both can agree on that. You came in after me, so I'm sure 2003 is probably ancient to you and a lot of our listeners.
And I was in 2013.
Yeah, so you were right. So then you can imagine in 2000 or 10 years before that, it was a lot different of a look to that campus than it is now. But I took the tour of the campus. They showed me around. I met with all the producers. And I met with all the different executives. Had lunch with one of the recruiters there, and we talked about my experience and what I wanted to do and why I had this sports background and why I wanted to work so badly for ESPN. And I didn't even know exactly where they were going to station me, but when I had gotten the job and when they had offered me and I had accepted the job, they put me at their radio department. So I got my start in ESPN radio on the national side as a production assistant. And that's what allowed me to work with all the legends that you see now. Some of them have gone on, some of them have transitioned. God bless their soul. Stuart Scott, John Saunders, who I work with. Dan Patrick was there. Stephen A. Smith was there. Colin Cowherd, Mike Golick, Mike Greenberg. I actually produced their shows. Freddie Coleman, who I still talk to this very day, I actually produced his show for a couple of years there. He actually came in after I had started. So Freddie and I go way back.
Okay.
And I met all the other different personalities after that came in. So
I used to play basketball with Freddie a lot.
Oh, yeah. You know,
the
court,
gym.
they had the old court, they had the gym playground, they had the court and the gym. And then I don't know if you remember if they had it there when you were there, but they had actually had a court behind the cafeteria, an outdoor court.
They just took it out after I was there about a year. That's when they built the new cafeteria. Because, you know, they I remember Drake did some stuff out there.
Right. They had the actual outdoor court behind the cafeteria when I was there. So during the summer times, it was like late night hoops was after 12 o'clock midnight. A lot of the people like myself were out there playing ball on the court. And Freddie would come out there occasionally at nighttime. He would show some stuff. And Mark Jackson would come out there, and Mark Jackson would just make everybody just walk off the court like, I don't want to play with Mark Jackson. You might think he might be old to play, but that dude can still move at his age. Let me tell you. And even then, when I was out there with him, he
And
was
you was
doing
right
stuff that
after
made
his
you,
career, at the end of his career, because
yeah.
he's fresh off
Well,
of
there you
losing to
go.
the Lakers in the finals.
It's like this dude still got it. I'm like, y'all out here thinking that y'all can take Mark Jackson now? I'm like, he got to run off the court. But anyway, those are some of the glory days of ESPN. I was there for 6 years, and things happened down the line, and I started doing more localized radio reporting here in Connecticut because I just wanted to see what else was going on outside the walls of Bristol, and that's what allowed me to go back to my master's at Quinnipiac, and then I started doing local radio, which I'm doing now at WTIC in Hartford, and also when I went to Quinnipiac, they had a radio station I was at for 12 years, but unfortunately, that went off the air last May. There was a dispute over the new president of the university came in, and they thought that the station was not helping the student body at Quinnipiac. So unfortunately, they ceased the operations back in May, and unfortunately, me and a few other of my staff members were laid off as a result. But I was there for 12 years, and that's where the whole localized radio thing comes in now, which is what I'm doing. But ESPN got my start, will allow me to see what the radio project was like and how to produce content and work with audio, and also how to figure out who's who, because I'm a radio junkie. So when I'm at home, I'll turn down the TV and listen to the radio for sporting events. Like I ordered NBA League Pass the other day, and I'm listening to the radio calls of the games. I'm not even watching the TV side. So I'm a radio bona fide junkie to heart. I'll even listen. I mean, I drive a lot too, so there's no TV in my car, so I'm listening to the radio. That's how I get my information. And to this very day, Brian, I still find myself, call me a dinosaur, you will, but I'm always listening to a radio app or a radio in my car or a radio speaker to get information before I turn on the television.
So has that transitioned you into becoming a podcast consumer?
It has, and a lot of that is because the audio business has changed now. I mean, people are listening more to podcasts, and they don't want to find themselves listening to radio broadcasts, which take a lot of time. They want to get all their information within a short period, and they feel like it's easily accessible. I mean, that's what the thing with technology has made these things available right at their fingertips. We have all these apps now. I have all my station apps on my phone. I can listen to any station now. So you have podcasts. Your podcast, for example, is one I listen to a lot, by the way.
I
Yeah, I'm giving you a
appreciate it.
shout out here. I'm giving you a shout out here. I do listen to your podcast. I like to listen to everyone else's success stories that you have on here and talk about what they did. And the younger generation finds these podcasts more to their liking because it talks to them and it speaks to them about what they want to hear. So they're not going to always turn on the car radio like we do and listen to the radio. I can listen to a newscast on the radio, but some of them would find that to be boring. Oh, I want to listen to it on the phone. Okay, well, guess what? Somebody has to be behind the speakers and behind the control room to put that podcast together so you can listen to it on the phone. And that's
Mhm.
where I talk about having all that knowledge and background of the business because it's changes so much. You got to learn all the tools of the trade to survive now.
Now, the one thing about radio that I always enjoy, like you said, you can listen to it everywhere. You can't take your TV everywhere, you know. Um, but now, when are you getting a podcast? I know you do the anchoring thing, so I know you get to talk. But have you ever thought about having your own podcast where you can kind of like say what you want to say or talk about different things?
You know what, Brian? I find myself to be more of a news anchor because I've been adapted to doing that for a long time now. I mean, I have some thoughts I like to share with other people, but I don't think I would be one that could be opinionated like that all the time.
Okay.
I feel like that my profession is just that I'm a news anchor by heart. I'm a sports reporter. That's just what I do. Now maybe one of these days I might consider that once I'm probably like a little ways off to where I have my little bit of more freedom to do things, if you will. But right now, given my civic duty to being a news anchor and a reporter, I think I can stick to that medium right now, and that's why you don't even see me talk as much about politics on social media because if anything, I'm reporting about it. I have my thoughts about what's going on in the world right now with things and everything along those lines, but I tend to stay in my lane, if you will, which is being a news anchor and a reporter. Now, if I find something that needs to be called out and needs to be called into question, absolutely I'm going to speak it. But I tend not to be controversial, if you will, because I'm not about trying to rub people the wrong way or trying to make people an enemy of me. I'm just doing my job, which I was hired to do, which is to be the guy that gives you the information that you seek from me so that you know what's going on in your communities and what's going on in the world. And that's something I take pride in every single day.
Now, I understand you don't like, you don't intend to go out and quote unquote make enemies, right? However, when you do, step out of that box, have you seen with social media, you've gotten a lot of backlash, or you've kind of been able to like keep it at a minimum?
Well, you're never going to work in this industry and not get called out by people when you're doing stuff in radio. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to make everybody happy. That's just the way it is. I mean, I've read stories on the air, Brian, where people have actually called the newsroom and told me, "Hey, that was wrong. Get your facts right. You're saying something that's not true about this story. That's not what happened." But again, it's part of my job. I'm just speaking it as it's being reported to me, and the information that I gather. So if it means if what I do is the wrong thing for people, again, it's a mixed bag here. You can't always make everybody happy. Nobody's going to want to always hear the bad stuff. Nobody's always going to want to hear the good stuff that's not true to them, or they're going to have their own personal viewpoint or opinion on that, which is fine because we all are entitled to our opinions on things in life. That's just the way it is. But when I'm being questioned about my integrity from my profession and what I do, that really bothers me because I do not get into this profession and work for over 2 decades to find myself being one where his work has to be called into question because he said something on the air that was inaccurate or was false.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you check my records. I am not one that has put myself in that position. I'm not one of these guys that likes to have their own personal agenda, which is what's becoming of the industry now. A lot of folks are getting into it with their own agenda, and I tend to shy away. Like you have the left side, you have the right side, and you have the in between. But my job is I'm just going straight here and I'm being neutral about it. So if the people listening on the radio don't like what they hear, well, you have the option to turn your radio off or turn your podcast off or don't even listen. But that's my job. And whether you like it or not, this is what I was in this position to do. So you're gonna take the good with the bad or don't even waste your time with it, is how I look at it.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I could always appreciate about you, Mike. You know, it's because you always been a straight shooter and you always been fair. And which I'm going to get to the next point is mentorship. I met you via social media when Glenn, shout out to Glenn Thomas, and I were kind of creating this social media team via Fox Sports 1340, and now Fox Sports 1340 96.9 FM. One of my best friends in the world, Ashley Baker, she told me
Mm-hmm.
that you pretty much told her, no, do this, apply, apply, apply. And boom, the rest is history. And then, obviously you and I connected. And I realized like so many people that I had knew, obviously the people, some of the people we knew at ESPN, shout out to Marcus Patton, but also people that's like Kelsey and now Renee, Brandon, so many people in the industry that you knew that you've helped, and this is why I say you're your favorite mentor's mentor, because to me, you've been a mentor to me on how to be a mentor, how to help out the next generation. When, I guess to say, I know obviously you're a teacher, but when did you discover the passion for mentorship?
Because I've been in situations where a lot of our colleagues, Brian, can attest to those same situations that they've been through. They've been through the situations that you and I have been through. We've been kicked around. We've been cut loose. We've been kicked to the curb. We've been told that we can't do this. We can't do that. We face all kinds of adversity and we've dealt with negativity. And I can relate to that because I've been in this business, like I said, 21 years. You're never going to go through that long of a period without dealing with any controversy, any setbacks, any drama. I was fired 3 times. Okay, I'll go on the record. I was fired 3 times in this profession. I've been laid off twice. Okay, I had to collect unemployment. I had to take bottom end jobs to make ends meet because at the time there was nothing available. I had to make ends meet until I was able to get back into this thing regularly. So I'm not too proud to admit that. Now, when I see other students in this generation going through the same situation, half the problem is they don't have the proper guidance that they need from those that have been there. That's what bothers me. If somebody, and not to call anybody out in particular here, I'm just saying that people that have a certain status, and maybe you can agree with me on this one, Brian, people that have a certain status and have made that status in their work and what they've done in this industry and have that kind of clout, if you will, perhaps they can use that kind of power that they have to entice others to get them to that level too. My thing is, if you have that kind of ability and you have that kind of weight that you can pull to help somebody get a job somewhere and you see that they're struggling, well, why wouldn't you want to go to bat for that person? That's why I started becoming a mentor, because I see a lot of this to this very day. Now, I may have more mentors than you can count my hands right now, my fingers, and I do believe that, and I have no problem with that. These kids need support, and they need guidance. They're doing what they can. The problem is the support is not always there. And even if the support is there, it's not fluent. It's not always, it's not consistent enough, is how I see it. See, when I operate, I want to make sure that I'm consistent with you and you're consistent with me. I don't expect me to help you out with something, then all of a sudden I don't hear back from you for 4.5 months or whatever the case. Or that you have decided to take your own approach and it made it work for you. Now, if that's the case, then so be it. Then that's on you. But my attitude is, if I can be a blessing to bless others, is what I like to call it, and that's what I'm going to do. I am not here to rain on people's parade. I'm not here to take anybody else's spot. I've done the work. You've done your work. Kelsey did her work. Ashley did her work. Renee did her work. And Brandon did his work. So my attitude is, they got theirs. I got mine. I don't mind going out on my way to help others get there, because I know people that they don't know that I want them to meet that can tell them, okay, well, let's take a chance on you for a job. Or let's see what you can do. Or you have a background that seems to be impressive. Let's see what we can do with you. Oh, you know Michael? Oh, you know Brian? Oh, well, then we need to talk. Oh, you work there with Brian? Oh, you work at ESPN with Mike? Oh, then you know Freddie Coleman? Oh, you know Jamel Hill? Oh, you know Kelsey? Oh, then we need to sit down and let's talk about what you want to do for us. Those are the kinds of relationships and kinds of reactions that I want to get out of these youngsters that are trying to break into the business, Brian. Not a lot of that's going on right now. That's why I take mentoring very seriously. I'm not looking for any handouts here either, and I'm looking for anything in return. My thing is that, case in point, I went to an event last summer up here in Connecticut. UConn football, this is their final season in the American Athletic Conference, and they have an annual event up in Rhode Island for the football media days. Now, one of my good buddies here, his name is Neil Ostrout. He works for the Journal Inquirer. He covers UConn there. We met at the NCAA tournament, which was here in Hartford last March. First time in 20 years it was back here. We started a conversation about UConn sports and everything. So we got the ball rolling that way, and then we started talking about my interest in going to some of these events around Connecticut, because I was always sitting in the newsroom anchoring news and not getting out as much and doing stuff like I wanted to. So he gave me an invite to come to the event up in Rhode Island, and my point here is that the connection was made by just simply asking and talking, and we just got it going. And he went to bat for me. Now, the guy didn't have to do any of that, is my point, but he wanted me to do that, and I asked him what I can do to repay him for what he did for me. You know what he tells me? He says, and I quote, "Do it for the next boy and girl behind you that has the same aspirations as you do." And that has stayed with me ever since. And that's why I take this mentorship very seriously.
You know, I got to give a shout out to my cousin Addis, because he essentially said the same thing. It was a different situation. I moved to Connecticut when you know, obviously you go into a new city, you don't necessarily just know exactly where you're going to live at. He let me live with him. I said, you know, do I owe you anything? Can I pay a bill? Can I pay like the cable bill or something? He said, no, pass it on to the next person. When somebody else, if they in reason, they working hard and they just need a little bit of help, be that person, you know. And that's the thing. I've watched you so many people. I've seen you at NABJ. It's not just one of these things that, you know, some people do stuff with social media, Mike. And, you know, it's my show. I can say what I want. Some people do things with social media, but it's not genuine. I've seen you at NABJ sitting there when nobody else is paying attention, when the camera's not on, helping students, helping young professionals. Hey, this is what you need. This is how you do things. I've seen you, I've heard of the stories of you being on the phone with people. And I'll put this out there, and I said, I'm gonna just say this. I know that you've blessed people in other ways. You know what I mean? And that's the
Oh,
reason,
absolutely.
you know,
I know where
and
you're
you,
going with that. Yeah.
yeah, you know, and I'll just leave it at that. But I know you've been a blessing to people who've struggled in certain ways. So I've been able to appreciate that from you myself, you know, when I had, you know, questions about things, or I'm saying, man, I don't know, I want to give somebody advice and they're not listening. You would say, hey, man, sometimes you just got to pull back. And like I said, even you've been a mentor to me on how to be a mentor, which is a you know, add me to your family tree. You know how they got the coaches tree. I'm under the Michael Lyle tree when it comes to
Oh
mentorship.
man. See, then that's what I'm saying right here. See now this is what I mean. I appreciate all these kind words from everybody. I really do, and I take it with it. I take it all to heart, and believe me, I am never too proud to say thank you, and I love you guys for it. Really, it's all about the love, and I appreciate that, and it's all about showing that support. But again, at the end of the day, brother, it's the same way it is for everybody else. Like you just told me what your cousin told me, and what Neil Ostrom told me, and like if you recall, when we were in Detroit in 2018 for the convention, Tyler Perry was there. He said the same thing. He said, hold the door open for somebody else. We got to continue to pass that baton on, man. We're not doing enough of that. That's what we're doing here. That's the whole point of this whole mentoring thing. It's not about just, oh, I want to help. I'm just going to just be a mentor. No, it's also a career investment. It's not just that. It's also an investment in their life.
Mm-hmm.
You're there to help them with anything that they need. It's not just about a business side of things, but you just said in other ways. Yeah, because let's face it, we're all trying to strive to survive these days. It's just the way it is. That's just the world that we're living in. It's the economics. We all got to make our coins. We all got to make sure we're on top of our game. We got to get into these doors that are seemingly harder to get into now because of all the stuff that's going on in the world. So what we say is just keep passing that baton on to the next person. Make sure that somebody who's following in your footsteps, tell them what they need to do and make sure that they have what they need, and then just keep it going like a domino effect, one after another. If we do that and do more of that, we would be just fine. In fact, Kelsey told me one time that we're all in this together. So she's right. Mm-hmm. We are all in this whole thing together. My thing is, though, let's make sure we stay in it together and it manifests. That's my only thing. Make sure that everybody's winning here. It's not just individual effort. That's just everybody's just like all for themselves. Let's make sure we're all doing it as one cohesive unit here.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you've been a therapist too. You know.
Yeah, right. I don't have a PhD for that, but okay.
Well, right, but you know, and what I mean is, you know, obviously, mental health is important. So there are times that people keep stuff bottled in, but then there are times where you have to, as you should, talk to somebody so that you can get the necessary help and treatment. And there's been times I'm pretty sure you've spent 1 or 2 hours on the phone with people because they wasn't happy with the way their career was going or the opportunities, or they was trying to essentially find themselves, you know. And one of the things you also have done as a mentor is lending your voice, lending your professional voice. I mean, you do the intro to Kelsey's show, you know, that's a big deal. And there's countless others, you know. So, you know, that's one of the things, man. Like I said, I'm on here on record and I'm speaking for everybody, whether they told me or not, to say we appreciate you, bro.
Well, again, I appreciate y'all, and listen, this is the guy that you're talking to right now. This is the guy that's been this way since day number one. Okay, I am not some celebrity journalist. I'm just like everybody else in this business. We're all trying to make our ends meet. We're trying to make a living, an honest living. We're all trying to survive and just make ourselves happy with what we chose as a professional career. Do our best work, and like we just mentioned, just keep passing it on, and just making sure that anybody that's in a struggle. You saw recently that one of my mentees was just became a member of the NABJ, and we were on the phone about this for the last couple of weeks. She was struggling trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her professional career, and I told her you should join the NABJ. And you saw what happened when it became a topic on Twitter. She was trending. I said, now you see what happens. Now you're trending. Now you got the door open because now people know who you are. That's why you should join the NABJ, because now you got people like your mentor who know other people that's going to say, I know this sister or I know this brother. Give them a shot to give them a job. Let them show you what they can do.
People don't realize one thing. I mean, you named Stuart Scott, Dan Patrick, John Saunders. That's just 1/3. I mean, not even a third. I'm sorry. That's just like 1/100th of the people that you know. You also mentioned Stephen A. Smith. People who get that big break and become, you know, especially in this business, journalists, celebrities, obviously know people who decided not to go that route. They know producers, you know, like you as a production assistant, you've been producing. They know people, and that's the thing. Like a lot of times people don't realize that right in there. You know, we had a conversation at work a couple of weeks ago. Somebody said the word Rolodex, and you know, these millennials, some of them didn't even know what a Rolodex was, but in a sense, they don't realize that in your Rolodex, you might have their dream, their idol right in there, you know? especially if they're in this business.
Exactly. And I mentioned Stuart Scott because let me tell you, my first year at the NABJ that year in Dallas in 2003, I met all those guys. I met Stuart Scott. I met when he was there Kevin Frazier, who was at ESPN now works for Entertainment Tonight. He was there too. I met John Saunders. I met David Aldridge when he was there. I met all the ESPN personnel. I met Jim Elber. I met all of them when they were there. So I got my break by just meeting all of them. And I wasn't just there just to take pictures and just to post on social media. I wanted to get their thoughts on what am I going to do to get in this business. Like, what do I need to do to make it in the industry that I have chosen or you have chosen as a profession? What steps do I need to take? And they told me just what I need to do, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And I've caught up with a few of them. Freddie told me recently, he said, brother, whatever it is that you're doing, just keep doing it because that's where we're at now. So whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that Kelsey's doing, whatever it is that Renee, Brandon, Michael, all of them, he just said just keep doing it and stay in the business as best as you can because you know it's changing. And it's becoming more and more saturated with the fact that technology has led to these changes. So learn more about the techie side. That's why when I tell students about being in TV, they want to be in front of the camera, which is all well and good. But I also tell them, don't just become a TV personality. Learn the technical side of the business too. You know, a lot of jobs are looking for those that can produce content and can put together audio and put together packages. And you never know if that job is going to just entail just that one particular task, Brian. You get hired for jobs now. You might be a production assistant, but next minute now you're running the board, or you're going to be co-hosting the show, or you might be doing a newscast or a sportscast because somebody called out sick, or it's the holidays and they don't have as much coverage. I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled in different directions by the simple fact that, okay, I might be a news anchor, but now I'm going to be someone to go switch assignments and go out and cover a story in the street somewhere. Or, for example, go cover the WNBA finals because the Connecticut Suns and they don't have local coverage, and they know my background as a sports journalist, not just a news journalist. And not just that, but I also can write stories. I used to be a writer as well before I got into broadcast. So all these different traits and talents are just as essential because you might be applying for one job, but you never know down the road, hey, you know what, Brian, we need you to produce this content for the show. Or, Brian, can you do a stand-up for us? Or, Brian, can you anchor the 6:30 news because our main anchor is out sick today, so we need somebody to cover. And those are the breakthroughs you want that we get. And then once you get them, you make the most of them, you add them to your resume, and that puts you ahead of the rest of the pack because now you can say, I've done all
that. As my uncle would say, help me somebody.
Hallelujah. Preaching.
Man.
It's the truth, though, man. I don't speak the truth. It defends itself. I mean, you see it all the time in our industry. You see what's going on now. Folks are not even just doing production work anymore. Now you got guys that are actually out there covering stories and doing other things that the job doesn't even entitle them to do initially when they're hired for that particular position. So you never know what they're going to put in front of you.
I tell people all the time, one of the things when I go talk to students, I share my story of Johns Hopkins. I came there, Mike, just to help them get ready for the annual Science Writers Boot Camp. That's it. Just to help promote it on social media, contact the doctors about their talks, get their presentations together, meet with the National Press Club, make sure everything was in line. But I said, hey, I need to keep this job. What can I do? Hey, your social media needs to change. You guys don't tweet with pictures. You guys don't tweet with video. Let's add this. Let's add that. And now 4 years later, I'm still here. Thank the good Lord. But it's because I changed. You know, in case you missed it, was created. Shout out to you because you validated that series. I tell a lot of people that we talk about NABJ. The National Association of Black Journalists, for me personally, has helped because I've been able to go to the convention and then get the tools and bring it back to my job. And that's the same thing I want these young journalists to understand, you know? Now,
I agree.
Before we get out of here, Mike, I always ask this question. The title of the show is called Breaking Through the Glass Ceiling. Now, I know it's been a long time, and that's not me getting on your age. It's me praising your experience. When did you feel like you broke the glass ceiling? What was the moment where you said, I got it. I belong in this business?
When I got the job at ESPN in 2003, that's when I got that phone call after I had just came back from the NABJ convention that week is when I got that phone call. That's when I knew it was time. That was my breakthrough. because again, I had worked with internships in college at Howard University. I covered stuff around DC, but I was waiting for that first major breakthrough out of college, like we all want when we get that degree. It's like, okay, now what's the next step? When that phone call came through after I came back from Dallas that summer, that was breaking the ceiling, because that was the start of my professional career. And ever since, it's been some bumps and whatnot, but after all that, though, I'm still here, and I thank and that's why the NABJ was critical and crucial for me at that point, because that allowed me to get my start.
Man, Mike, I definitely appreciate you, big bro. I love you, man. Let the people know where they can find you.
Social media, Twitter, Instagram, Lyle Multimedia, all one word. You can also find me on Facebook at Michael Lyle Jr., and you can find me on LinkedIn, which has become popular now. Michael Lyle Jr. as well on that. So I'm all over social media. Just search my last name. My profile pic is pretty much the same as it always is everywhere else, so I'm not hard to find.
He's not hard to find. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you in the beginning, he's a legend. You just heard the story. The legendary, the man himself, Michael Lyle. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike, I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
Ryan, this was an honor. Thank you so much for having me on. And listen, God bless you, and continue to do what you're doing down here too, man. You got something brewing with this podcast. I love hearing what everyone else is doing. So please keep it going.
I appreciate you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was your favorite mentor's mentor, Michael Lyle. So make sure you tune in next week as I bring on a Morganite, Benjamin McKnight III. We get in to discuss his journey to Morgan State while in ROTC, as well as how he covered so much while he was at Morgan that I can't wait. I can't wait for you guys to hear this one. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you drop me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Follow me on Spotify if that's what your thing. But you know what? Drop the rating and then send it in to me. Let me know so I can give you a shout out. Until the next time, folks, I'm Brian H. Waters. Y'all know what I say. Forever 824. Kobe. This podcast is brought to you by B. Waters Productions. It is produced and edited by myself, Brian H. Waters, with the music brought to you by Hypnosis. You can find Hypnosis on Instagram at hypno_beats.